Welcome to Puck Talk CS. We're hopping right in. Kaapo Kakko signs a new deal. Steve-O, take it away.
Kakko is back. To be honest, Chavs, I wasn't really expecting this soon. I think maybe we would have or Drury would have took his time to digest things, kind of move forward, maybe plant this in your head, give Kakko a deal in a couple of weeks, But listen, I'm ready to jump right in, so let's talk some puck. Chavs, let's get your first raw reaction here. Kakko resigning. What do you think?
Well, the raw reaction, I really liked what Laviolette said on breakup day. I wasn't there, but he told the media that he took responsibility for that. I'll throw the quote up too on here. He took responsibility for it, and he knows that he can get, there's confidence in the organization that Laviolette can get to these players. Steve-O, 365 days ago, the New York Rangers were long into their summer after the first round exit against the Devils. And everybody was wondering, if Lafreniere has another okay season, they're probably sign that contract to trade him. Now we're talking about a player that, we're looking at 7, 8-year type max deal because he went off in the playoffs. So the reason I mentioned that with Kakko is because Laviolette shoulders responsibility. Kakko took responsibility. Both sides did a really good job on this deal. It's only a $300K increase from the last deal, 2.1 to 2.4. Biggest takeaway, he avoided his arbitration rights. So he sacrificed not having arbitration to sign this deal. And it also is a contract that if things don't work out, they can trade Kakko, and it will likely benefit him in that respect as well. So it's a win-win all around.
I agree 100%. And I know a lot of people out there disagree with this take, with mine and yours. People that we've been interacting with, on our accounts, I know 100% disagree with this. We had a poll out there. We said it was keeping Kakko a good move, and we had over 50 people respond, and 30% said yes, it was a good move. 19% said no, and 51% said he's got one more year to prove it. But I guarantee you, if there was no one more year to prove it, more of the 51% would be more towards that no category. And that is exactly in line with what I saw when I was there at Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Final. Kakko was getting a tremendous amount of hate, and I really don't know what he's done to get that. But if you look at it statistically, I was just telling you this before we jumped on the pod here. Kakko had his second best year statistically, and think about this: he missed, I think it was about 19 games. He had that injury that kept him out. And I remember, if we go back to the Epi, did we hit a little soft spot where we were losing to? I think we lost 2 or 3 games while Kakko was out, and we weren't begging for it, but we were like, yeah, we miss Kakko. And now to see the fan base do a complete 180 on him, it's tough. And I'll be honest, I share the same opinions as you. I'm happy we brought him back. And to be honest with you, I really do think that Kakko, I think he likely earns more in a 1-year deal in the open market than he does with the Rangers. So I think you made a really good point there. I think I've never had any doubt with Kakko in terms of his loyalty to this team, and I think he wants to prove it. So I'm really excited that we're retaining Kakko. I really don't know. Again, if you're listening out there and you disagree, go to Puck Talk CS Graham. You can comment below. What is it in Kakko's game that turns you off? Because it's a head scratcher for me.
Well, I think people have a hard time with the conversation of he was a highly touted offensive, productive talent. The NBC draft board graphic said there was no flaw in his game. So I think when you look in context, right, this was a player that when he scored the golden goal, he set the record for TPS with 22 goals and broke the record in Finland. This is a player that was coming in, and we thought it was going to be immediate offense, like potential 50-goal scorer, second overall pick. The highest at the time in the franchise history outside of then the next year with Lafreniere. They moved up and were able to get in this position. I think they were 6th that year. They moved up into that draft position. So I do understand where that hype was, but I think you have to leave that at the door now. He's proven that he's a capable third line player. He's really great with possession. He can play make. He uses his frame to his advantage. From his first season forward, he improved his defensive game. And I think that's addressing just where fans, they have different opinions. Some view him as that he never really reached that second overall status, which I also agree with, right? Like he hasn't reached that. But I also view the benefits of having a player you're paying $2 million for to play on the third line and has a ceiling. Like, let's see where that ceiling can go. I also commend the front office because this is a situation where with Kakko, the front office is giving him a final chance. You can now say, if things don't work out, that Kakko really might benefit somewhere else, and it wasn't working in New York. We gave him a final chance, and this is really the player he is now at the NHL level, and that's okay because the Rangers are looking to win now. I think he can add to that recipe. His game is very different from his counterparts and his teammates, which I really like. But Steve, I do think part of that conversation is the second overall status. Do you think he can build upon that? I thought under Gerard Gallant, when he was with Kreider and Zibanejad, he had the most confidence in 22-23. That was under his last bridge deal. And when he got moved to the kid line again, it seemed like that zapped his confidence a little. And he had his most productive season in 2023. It looked like in the preseason, he was going to outshine Lafreniere. And that just wasn't the case. Now, you mentioned the injury, too. I also don't know if anyone's really considered that over the grand scheme. Like, that looked like a season-ending injury.
It did. When I watched that game and I saw that, I was thinking he's done. Like, I literally thought, like, he's not coming back till April, maybe at the earliest. And he came back from that pretty quickly. I think that's one thing that gets overlooked, and a lot of people in sports coming off of injury don't perform typically up to their peak. So Kakko, a player that's 23 years old, I'm just not ready to especially after watching what Laviolette did to Laf, this year. This is somebody that I have kind of put all my faith in, and I think he could get the best out of these young players. And I'm not saying, Lof's ceiling might be higher than Kakko's, but I think we could get a little bit more out of Kakko than, we've been getting. And I mentioned the stats, I want to make it clear. I'm not backing up Kakko. I support him, but I'm not, I think Kakko had a bad year, to be honest with you. And I think if we sit here and we had Kaapo on the epi here, Chaz, I think he's going to tell you the same thing. He knows, I know it, and I think everybody knows it. This is clearly a show me deal. He knows he had a rough year offensively, and this deal is meant to give him the motivation to earn more in his next contract. It's meant for him to show that he has a spot on this team. He could be consistent. He could be healthy. And again, like I said, I think he earns more in a 1-year contract than he does in the open market. Now, there's a lot of fans bugging this out. I don't think this is a deal to flip out about, because it's easier to trade a player that's under contract than a player pending a contract, even as a restricted free agent. So I think this gives the Rangers a little bit more leeway. Again, I don't think Drury has any intentions of dipping in and dipping into the pool of trading Kakko. But let's say and again, I don't think there's any circumstance where we trade him. I mean, he would have to have 1 goal, or he would have to have 3 goals in 40 games, which again, I think he's more capable of that. So a healthy year, I think the circumstances could be different. But again, there is the possibility. And again, everybody's been calling out. A Rangers Twitterverse has been saying, good, we could trade him now. I really don't think, the Rangers championship window is now. And you talked about the blueprint we digested and went through this Florida Panthers team. I really do think a lot of different players on that team. I think Kyle, like you said, adds something to this New York Rangers team. And would I be surprised if the Rangers trade Kakko? Yes, I would be. I really would be next season, Chives.
Okay.
Would you?
You know what? Here's the thing. If we're talking about right here, right now, the draft we know is June 24th, next Monday, and then free agency is July 1st, the following Monday. It's at the Sphere. Uh, James Dolan owns that, right? So there's the Ranger connection there, and he kept the reports were that he kept the first overall pick, which I believe is 29th or 30th for the Rangers, because it was at the Sphere, right? It's his place. It's the last unified draft. And it was his event. Or the event is at his venue. So with that though, listen, if a deal comes about that really is really enticing, I think the Rangers would be open to trading it. That the contract is easy to move, and it could benefit Kakko as well. It could be beneficial for both sides. I still think that you have to read the writing on the wall, and the writing in between the lines was Chris Drury's breakup day presser. He said we're going to give everything Kakko needs to reach his potential. And he said that at the trade deadline too, because he could have moved him at the deadline and did not. So I think they have faith in him. I think they're going to try and put him in a position to succeed again. And I think if it doesn't work this time, I think both sides mutually know what the that can be. And again, like you said, stats-wise, second best season. Is it second overall level? No, I mean 44 playoff games, 9 points, 4 goals. Now, when you compare that to Lafreniere, he's playing like a first overall player now. And we saw that in the postseason. So that's a player that Laviolette got through, as well as Braden Schneider, as well as Keandre Miller. So there's a few guys that have really come into their own. Kakko seems to still be lingering, but I also still see him, even if it's just this 1 year, as a valuable third line piece. Like that's where I see him at. And, you know, if he exceeds that, that's even better. I think it's all net positive if he really breaks out. Now, can he break out on the third line? I don't know. And the question I have is, now this is far out, Steve-O, and I know we don't like talking about the lineup, but, you know, if Mika and Kreider are still the first line, are you going to try Kakko up there again? Because it seems like the only way he can really reach that second overall like status and level is what we saw with Lafreniere, where he played with line mates that were also capable of supporting that.
Yeah, he played on the third line mostly, but he got shots on that top line with Zibanejad and Kreider to start the season. Let's not forget that. And it didn't work out. It didn't work out, and
he said that too. Like, he took responsibility. That he said, if we were scoring more, like, that's on me. Like, it's not on anyone else but me. So he looked in the mirror on that.
Yeah, and I don't want to bury him. I don't want to bury Kakko on that, because Zibanejad also had a horrible year. You know, we're going to be coming out with Puck 12 grades coming up. That's one thing to stay tuned for in the future. But I do not expect Mika Zibanejad, as a little preview, to be high on those grades. But again, Kreider and Mika didn't have a good year. So I can't bury Kakko on, oh, he's failed on the first line, because the first line overall this year was a failure, you know? So I can't really grade him off that aspect. And again, there was the injury, you know, it's tough. You know, I think he's going to come out and he's going to be that third line. Obviously, we know the second line's not going to get moved. That first line, it's missing that one piece, and I don't think Kakko's the answer. But still, he's a solid player. He's a reliable player, too. And when I say that, you might go, whoa! But when you think about it, Kakko is a reliable player. He doesn't give up penalties. He's very responsible defensively. I think he controls the puck well, you know, across the walls. I think he's very good behind the net offensively. That is one thing I noticed with Kakko's game. You know, I think he assisted a goal in the Washington series behind the net, and I kind of wanted to see a little more of that. You know, I don't know. You know, it was tough. You know, in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Panthers. The Panthers were so good defensively. They attacked you like a dog if you came 5 feet within that net. But that's something I was hoping to see more of Kakko. We didn't get it, but if we can see that jump next season, and I'm going to throw Hedl in there too. I want to see more from my guy. I can't have another year of this out in of the lineup with these injuries. I mean, if we get another year with that, you know. So moving towards next year, you know, I'm addressing now, and when we get to the starting point of the season, my two priorities that I'm circling big, get out a big red highlighter. Kakko and Hito are two players I really want to see Laviolette get to, because especially Kakko. I know we signed Hito, but Kakko, again, this is a prove it deal for him. And
Hmm.
again, there really is. I've been a Kakko defender. I don't want to look like a fool in a year from now and be like, it didn't work out. But I really do think there's more, Chives. I really do.
Yeah, and I like what you said with about it's a prove it deal. And again, I can't reiterate enough. The Rangers organization will only benefit if they put every resource they can to see if he can get better. He is his floor is that third line player that he played at the end of the season. And his ceiling is still there's a second overall player somewhere in there. And I have faith in that based on what we saw from Lafreniere. People are too short minded. A year ago, I even believed. I mean, we were on the podcast talking about it. I thought that if Lafreniere struggled by the time it was the trade deadline, we might see him go by this summer. And that's completely different. Like, that's a 180 flip. And I believe that if there's a coaching staff that can get to him, it's this one. Now, granted, I think, like you mentioned, the reason I like putting all the resources and stock into him is because, one, why not? And two, you don't want to be in the situation where you question if you could have done more with a player, especially one that you drafted that high. Um, I think the resources is the most important aspect to all of this, because if you trade him, he goes elsewhere. Maybe he succeeds more. Yeah, New York's a high pressure market. He knew that coming in. I do think that getting the most to him and trying to get through to him is better than not. Again, I don't think his trade value would be necessarily very high. You're better off giving him one more run. I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. And again, I like the way the management approached it. I like the way Kakko's approached it. He is a really great person to talk to. I had the chance to talk to him a lot early in the season about his role, shifting from the first line to the third line. One of the quotes that stuck out to me was he said, "I know I'm not the player I should be." And I think that wasn't just about, the current situation. I think he really was saying to me, overall, he hasn't been the player he wants to be or should be. And I think he does have the burning desire. There were a lot of things thrown his way. The things he can control are how he uses the resources, how he uses his ice time, how he approaches the game, and his confidence level, like, right, the mental game too. He can't control, though. Like you mentioned, the injury with Hedel. Like, those guys, I do feel for as well, because they can't control that. Steven Stamkos is a player that throughout portions of his career have had injury problems, and now he's a two-time Stanley Cup champion. So, granted, very different players. I'm just stating that he has to control what's in his control, and if that fails, then I think you move on. But if, again, it's another season riddled with uncontrollable things, it becomes a difficult situation again. So, like Lafreniere, to me, a season ago, he's never injured. He's a guy that stays healthy, and he still wasn't pulling through. So I do think they're a little bit different in that respect, but I think that's final piece for me on Kakko right now.
Yeah, I think the potential is there, and maybe my bar, I can't speak to everybody else's expectation of Kako in Rangers land, but maybe my expectation is a little bit lower.
Mm-hmm.
High. It might be higher than what I'm now pitching it to be, but lower than everybody else's, because let's go back to 2022. Kako was a player that scored 18 goals. He had over 40 points. So that potential's there, and I think he could stretch that out. Maybe we could get to 23, 24 goals. I think that potential's there, and 50 points. So maybe that's not as high as a Lafreniere's ceiling. But also, when you look at it, Lafreniere's playing on a line with Panarin and Trocheck, that's just an absolute terror of a line in the regular
Mm-hmm.
season. So, so again, I want to give Kako that chance, Chavs. I'm
Yeah.
happy. I'm happy this deal ended up panning out.
Also, let's just look, we mentioned career stuff. I don't think we have to do an autopsy on it, right? It's pretty clear, but 3 coaches since 2019. COVID shortens his first season, and he has celiacs and diabetes, so he was dealing with personal things too. Comes back, look, he was probably the best player in that qualifying round against Carolina. Remember, he came out and played really strong. 21, COVID season again. Didn't play the full season. 21, 22. Now it's Gallant. Doesn't play the full season. Is healthy scratch in the conference final, but was part of that. Was part of the kid line. Generated chances. Only 18 points that season. Only 43 out of 82 games. 22, 23 is best season like you just mentioned. And then we come into this year. I think there was a lot of confidence that he'd build off of that 40 points. Takes a step back with that injury that we thought was going to potentially end his season. Comes back and just struggled between the third and first line. The first line didn't support him very much. So through 300 games, there has been a lot of ups and downs. I think they just want one season where the management can be like, let's just get a clean look. Let's just get a clean look at him. If he struggles this year, we can trade the contract. If something better comes our way, I'm not even going to throw around trade rumors, but like say a Brady Tkachuk, I don't believe they're going to trade for him. Comes around, you throw him in that package and they'll take it. But I'd like to see him with, no nuts, no butts, no coconuts. Just give us a solid season, and we'll evaluate from there, right? And to pivot, Steve-O, it looks like if the Rangers won the conference final, they probably would have won the Stanley Cup this year. So I think that also adds to not only the conversation about individual players that will be grading soon, but the season as a whole.
Yeah, I remember. There were 2 people on this podcast that said that, that if the Rangers win, they're probably going to win the Stanley Cup. And we might even get a sweep. I mean, how about let's just talk about sports fans in general. I mean, you have the NBA Finals 3-0, NHL Finals 3-0. I mean, there's no entertainment in that, and that just goes to show you how dynamically good both the Celtics and the Panthers are. And this final shows us 2 things. Panthers are a pretty damn good team. I mean, we watch them, the Ranger series, but they're doing this consistently. They did it with Tampa. I don't think Tampa was Tampa from 3 years ago, but still they beat Vasilevsky. Boston, I don't think Boston offensively was laying down the hammer, but again, defensively and their goaltending is very good. And and us, we were the best team in hockey this year. They dispatched us. And I think, to be honest with you, I don't think the Oilers are that good. I think Dallas this would have been a close series if it was Dallas. But you got to give credit to Edmonton. The adversity that Edmonton has faced this year is, crazy. I mean, we were a month and a half into the season, and Edmonton was a bottom 4 team in the NHL, and now they're in the Stanley Cup Finals. But I want to get your thought here watching these games. I mean, Florida is just a wagon. They're going to be hosting and waving the cup within the next 4 days anyway. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think it goes to show you, and not to, it always comes back to the Rangers for us. But I think it also, I don't think it lightens the criticism we've had of Zibanejad and Panarin, but it does go to show you the best hockey player in the world, arguably the second best hockey player in the world, and one of the best defenders that's emerged in the Stanley Cup playoffs, one of the best goal scorers this season, Zach Hyman, all of them have been shut down. If that's how they win the Stanley Cup, that's quite the season for the Panthers. I mean, historically, I think the last time also it was in either the 90s, maybe it was 98 or something. I saw Artur Oracle put up the stat of 2 final series, NBA and NHL, that were both sweeps. The Panthers are taking it to him. Bob is playing out of his mind. I think he'll probably be Conn Smythe, and it goes to show you that the board battles, Ekblad tying it up late in the game, forcing mistakes and capitalizing on the other team's mistakes. Those are the 2 Panthers things that stood out the most through these 4 games. And what's frustrating, again, going back to the Rangers, is the Rangers kept the games closer. 2 overtime games, more than one goal game, or 3 overtime games, more than one goal game, or a 1 goal plus empty netter type of game. It's very frustrating considering the Rangers were keeping the game so close. It really felt like that was determining a champion. And so at least for the Rangers end, I think you look at it and say, wow, they were the best team in hockey. And I think that's now what everyone's doing, stepping back and saying, you know what? This is the best team in hockey. And it's made up of trades, waiver pickups, free agent signings that I don't think many believed would necessarily equal a Stanley Cup and a season like this one.
Yeah, and again, you look at blueprints. You compare Florida, you can compare it to the Rangers, and then you look at Edmonton. And Edmonton was a team where, no, this really isn't a good team. It isn't all about a 1 or 2 man show in the NHL. It's in the NBA you could get away with that 1 or 2 man show. The NHL you can't do that. I think what sucks is our team is positioned better than Edmonton. And they're in the Stanley Cup and we're not, because I thought we had the dogs. It just came down to performance, and we again. No need to rehash what happened, but our dogs did not show up, chives. So, with that being said, we got a whole off season ahead of us. Kakko resigned, and like I mentioned before, Puck Talk season-ending grades are coming out very shortly. So be sure to follow us across all of the socials at Puck Talk CS. Always remember, it's just the luck of the puck.